Tell me if any of this sounds familiar. You're talking to somebody you think is very cool, and suddenly your brain goes blank. Just in the night you need to sleep well the most, you can't seem to fall asleep. You're at an early warning command center in 1983 and get an alarm for a nuclear attack that you think is false, but you're not sure, and you have to make a decision very quickly to kind of save or destroy the whole world. I just found myself in these situations again and again, and I was really annoyed. Things that normally work really well are suddenly restricted when I feel under pressure. So I thought to myself, if I could understand how pressure works, then I could stop sabotaging myself in so many areas of life. That would be a pretty big power. So I set out to research this, and today I want to present you my model of pressure and show you with examples how you can apply it to all sorts of situations in your life. But first, we have to understand what pressure actually is. We all know what it feels like, but try to define it, and it doesn't seem to be that easy. And that's partly because we tend to confuse it with stress. But there are two different things. Pressure is the cause. It's a situation that throws us into a tailspin and demands a response from us. It's usually connected to goals and how we want things to turn out. Stress, on the other hand, is the effect. It's our psychological and physiological reaction to that pressure. Something's putting pressure on us, so we feel stressed. Because stress is the effect of pressure, the stress that we feel is as high as the perceived pressure. And that's the key here. Perceived. Because it's not just about the objective circumstances, it's to a large degree also about our subjective interpretation of them. This is what determines how much we feel pressured and by what. So two people can take the same exam and have completely different reactions. One finds it motivating, the other one burdensome, and Amanda doesn't care at all. This is good news. It means we have more influence over our stress than we think. And we can utilize this with a pressure reflection. For that, first we gotta ask ourselves, what do I feel pressured by in this moment? Second, is the interpretation justified in its strength? That means, is it reasonable for me to feel that pressured by it? And if yes, then is there anything that I can do to reduce the pressure? For the second and third point, it helps to understand what increases our perceived pressure. So let's get practical. I will introduce to you 3 key factors of pressure and show you how to use this knowledge to effectively reduce pressure. The first factor is stakes, or how big are the presumed consequences of whether or how successfully we react to the demands. And these consequences don't always have to be directly material. They can also lie in how much we judge ourselves or how much we think others would judge us. For example, if I fail an exam, it might not only suck for my grades, but also could have consequences for my self-image. Maybe I think that I'm not that intelligent after all, or my friends might think that, and that might be embarrassing. How can we apply this? If you notice that you feel pressured because you think the consequences would be big, it can help to first ask yourself if that really would be the case. And you can get specific here and also consider the worst, the realistic, and the best outcome. I use this general technique, for example, when I can't sleep because I'm putting too much pressure on myself to sleep. I remind myself that it's not the end of the world if I'm gonna be a little bit tired tomorrow. And I think about how to create better sleeping conditions for the next day. Then I also distract myself from the pressure-causing thought. For example, by making up a good night story or listening to one. Another aspect that influences how much we judge ourselves is responsibility. That means how big is our responsibility for and our influence on a successful response. If we feel more responsible for an outcome, then it increases how much we feel like the achievement says something about us, and also how much pressure we have to react to it. So this is still kind of like the judgment thing from before, but responsibility also has an effect on pressure independent of judgment. If I'm more responsible for something, then there's also more pressure on me to give a better response to the demands. How would you apply this? So similar to stakes, and can be very helpful to ask yourself how much responsibility and influence you really have. An example for this was my search for flats, where I was initially very stressed and feeling quite down when it didn't work out. I thought that if I didn't get in, it was because I had done something wrong, and I was super nervous about the interviews. Until a friend pointed out to me that I probably overestimate how much influence I have on the situation, and that there were a lot of factors outside of my control. So just as it's bad to think that we have no influence and see ourselves in a victim role, or to not take responsibility for our actions, it's also bad to assume that we have more responsibility than we actually have. And if things don't work out, to judge ourselves super hard for it. Sorry, we kind of need a smooth transition here. Can you do that? Got it. Another big factor that makes looking for a flat that stressful is, of course, uncertainty. Good. Flawless. It's that nagging feeling that we get when we try to respond to pressure. Is this gonna work? And how uncertain we feel is dependent on how difficult we perceive the goal to be in relation to our abilities to handle the situation. So factors like skills, time, information, or help that we get play a huge role in how uncertain we feel. Okay, nice. How can we use this knowledge now? So first, just as with the other factors, we can evaluate our own interpretation of the situation. So ask yourself, what is the real probability of success here? If we have a skewed image of ourselves, for example, because of low self-esteem, we might think that the chances are lower than they actually are. And this can lead to unnecessary pressure or negative spirals and self-fulfilling prophecies. To tackle that, what I do is write down beforehand what I think will happen and with which probability. And then afterwards, I check back and see if I was right. This is a technique from cognitive behavioral therapy. And I think it can work quite well because it allows you to make better assessments in the future and to actually update your beliefs. Another question to ask yourself is, are my standards reasonable or am I too perfectionistic here? To feel more confident, it can also help to arm yourself with the right resources. So to get more time, information, or help when needed, or to work on your skills. And especially for the information and the skills part, it can help to rehearse the situation before, either through visualization or through practicing in realistic circumstances. Also, writing down all the contingencies. So what is my plan A, but also what is my plan B and C, and what would I do in each of those plans if this or this happens. This always helps me a lot to calm myself down because it gives me the feeling of control, and then I'm like, okay, like even if this happens, I know what to do and it's gonna be fine. And as you start to think about all these individual factors, you might realize that you misjudged the pressure situation and that your response to the pressure isn't actually that helpful. Which can be a really important realization because it influences how you spend your time. Maybe you stressed out about this exam and then realized that you actually don't really give a shit about the results. Or you realize that you should quit your studies. Just brainstorming here. Another thing to keep in mind is that how many pressure points you have simultaneously can influence how big the pressure is that you feel. So in this case, it might make sense to tackle the bigger or the easier ones first so that you then have the mental capacity for the rest. Short disclaimer, there are definitely other effective ways to tackle stress beyond that. And I think depending on the source of the stress, it can make sense to also choose other ones. But we often perceive pressure to be higher than it actually is, which leads to unnecessary stress. So next time you're feeling stressed, it can help to do a pressure reflection. Ask yourself, what is pressuring me? Is my interpretation of the pressure realistic? This means, is it really that important and uncertain? And am I really that responsible for it? Based on that, is there anything that I can do to reduce the pressure? For example, through lowering the stakes, the uncertainty, or the responsibility. So in this video, we focused on reducing pressure. But here's the thing, sometimes the problem isn't too much pressure, it's actually too little. So in one of the next videos, I will share how I use pressure effectively to write my bachelor thesis in 1 week. I hope this was helpful to you. If you liked the video, please like the video, and until next time, bye.